On the night of April 14th, 1912, in the icy waters of the North Atlantic, one of the greatest maritime tragedies in human history unfolded. The RMS Titanic, the largest and most luxurious ship ever built at the time, struck an iceberg and sank on her maiden voyage. Out of more than 2,200 passengers and crew, over 1,500 lives were lost. The Titanic was more than just a ship. It was a floating palace, a symbol of early 20th century industrial ambition, luxury, and human pride. Her story is not only about a shipwreck, but about the hopes, dreams, and tragedies of the people on board. It is about class differences, heroism, human errors, and the eternal reminder that nature is more powerful than man's inventions. Even today, over a century later, the Titanic continues to fascinate the world. It has inspired countless books, documentaries, and films. But beyond the Hollywood glamour lies the real, heartbreaking story of ordinary and extraordinary people caught in a disaster that should never have happened. 2. Construction of Titanic. The Titanic was the brainchild of the White Star Line, a powerful British shipping company. At the time, competition for dominance of the transatlantic passenger trade was fierce. White Star's biggest rival, the Cunard Line, had two record-breaking ships, the Lusitania and the Mauretania. White Star needed something even bigger and more luxurious to regain its prestige. In 1907, White Star's chairman, J. Bruce Ismay, met with American financier J.P. Morgan, whose company owned White Star. Together, they planned to build three massive ocean liners, the Olympic, the Titanic, and the Britannic. Construction of Titanic began in 1909 at the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, Ireland. Thousands of workers labored for years on the project using steel plates, powerful rivets, and cutting-edge engineering. When finished, Titanic measured 882 feet long, about 269 meters, and 92 feet wide, with a gross tonnage of over 46,000 tons. She was the largest moving object ever created by human hands at that time. The ship was fitted with watertight compartments operated by massive steel doors. Designers claimed this made Titanic virtually unsinkable, because even if 4 compartments flooded, the ship could stay afloat. This belief, tragically, gave passengers and crew a dangerous sense of security. 3. The ship's features. The Titanic was not just big. It was breathtakingly luxurious. The interiors were designed to rival the finest hotels of Europe. First-class passengers enjoyed grand dining halls, opulent lounges, a Turkish bath, a swimming pool, and a grand staircase with ornate railings and chandeliers. First class. Wealthy passengers, including business magnates, aristocrats, and celebrities, traveled in unmatched luxury. Their cabins were spacious, some decorated in styles like Louis XVI and Georgian. Second class. Comfortable accommodations intended for middle-class families, professionals, and tourists. Third class. Steerage. Mostly immigrants seeking a new life in America. Though simple, Titanic's third-class facilities were cleaner and more comfortable than those on many other ships of the era. The ship also featured 4 giant smokestacks, though only 3 were functional. The 4th was added for aesthetic balance and to make the ship look even more powerful. With a top speed of 23 knots, about 26 miles per hour or 43 kilometers per hour. Titanic was not the fastest ship, but it was built for size and comfort. The unsinkable myth. From the beginning, Titanic was surrounded by hype. The press called her unsinkable, and many passengers believed it. Harland and Wolff engineers never used that exact word officially, but White Star Line's marketing fed the idea that Titanic was the safest ship ever built. This belief would have deadly consequences. Because the ship was considered unsinkable, lifeboats were not a priority. Titanic carried only 20 lifeboats, enough for about 1,178 people, just over half the number on board. The reasoning was that lifeboats would only be used to ferry passengers to nearby rescue ships, not to fully evacuate everyone. The maiden voyage begins. On April 10th, 1912, The Titanic prepared to set sail on her maiden voyage from Southampton, England to New York City. Excitement filled the air. Crowds gathered at the docks to watch the great ship depart. The passenger list was a mix of the world's wealthiest elites and hopeful emigrants heading to America. Among the first-class passengers were some of the richest people of the age. John Jacob Astor IV, one of the wealthiest men in the world. Benjamin Guggenheim, heir to a mining fortune. Isidore and Ida Strauss, co-owners of Macy's department store. Margaret Molly Brown, an American socialite later known as the unsinkable Molly Brown. At the same time, hundreds of third-class passengers, many from Ireland, Scandinavia, and Eastern Europe, boarded with dreams of a new life in the United States. After leaving Southampton, Titanic stopped at Cherbourg, France, to pick up more passengers, and then at Queenstown, now Cove, Ireland, for her final boarding. On the afternoon of April 11, 1912, she steamed into the Atlantic, carrying over 2,200 souls toward destiny.
The Titanic was not just a ship, it was a microcosm of society in 1912. On board were people of all classes, nationalities, and dreams. Each had a story, and together they formed a human drama that would end in tragedy. First-class passengers. This group included some of the wealthiest and most powerful figures of the era. They occupied luxurious staterooms and had access to exclusive lounges, private promenades, and gourmet meals. These passengers represented the very top of the social pyramid. They included aristocrats, industrial magnates, and celebrities. Some traveled for business, others for pleasure, and a few were returning from extended European tours. Second-class passengers. This group included professionals, academics, clergy, and families seeking comfort at a more affordable price. Second-class passengers still enjoyed fine dining, libraries, and good accommodations, superior to many first-class arrangements on other ships of the time. Third-class steerage passengers. By far the largest group, steerage passengers were mostly emigrants from Ireland, England, Scandinavia, and Eastern Europe. Many were poor farmers, laborers, or young families seeking a new start in America. They were packed into smaller cabins with shared facilities, but Titanic's third-class quarters were still considered among the best available at sea. Among these passengers were countless personal stories, dreamers, risk-takers, and everyday families. Many of them would never see the shores of America. Seventh journey, across the Atlantic. For the first 4 days of the voyage, life on Titanic seemed perfect. The weather was calm, the seas smooth, and spirits high. Each class of passengers experienced the journey in very different ways. First class. Life was a parade of luxury. Passengers enjoyed extravagant meals featuring oysters, filet mignon, duck, peaches and chartreuse jelly, and French wines. They strolled on the promenade decks, attended concerts, or relaxed in smoking rooms. Social events and dinner parties gave them the feeling of being in an exclusive floating club. Second class, passengers enjoyed their own dining saloon, a library, and social rooms. They had less luxury than first class, but still lived comfortably. Third class, though their quarters were simpler, steerage passengers socialized in common rooms, played music, sang folk songs, and danced. Children roamed the narrow corridors, and families passed the time dreaming of the lives they would soon begin in America. The ship itself was like a small city, alive with movement, stewards carrying trays, stokers shoveling coal into the massive boilers, officers patrolling the decks, and passengers strolling in the fresh Atlantic air. The Titanic steamed forward at nearly her top speed, under the command of Captain Edward J. Smith, a veteran seaman with decades of experience. Smith was widely respected and had been chosen to captain Titanic's maiden voyage before retiring. Many passengers felt reassured by his presence, calling him the millionaire's captain. 8. Warnings of icebergs. Despite the cheerful atmosphere, there were early warnings of danger. As Titanic steamed westward, other ships in the North Atlantic sent wireless messages reporting heavy ice fields and drifting icebergs. The first warnings arrived on April 13th and continued through April 14th, 1912. At least 7 iceberg warnings were received on the day of the disaster. Some of these messages were delivered to the bridge, but others were delayed or ignored because the wireless operators, Jack Phillips and Harold Bride, were busy sending passenger telegrams. One of the most critical warnings came from the Californian, a nearby ship that had stopped for the night due to dangerous ice. The Californian's operator tried to warn Titanic, but because he interrupted passenger messages, Titanic's wireless operator snapped back, "Shut up! Shut up! I'm working Cape Race!" That message, potentially life-saving, was dismissed as an annoyance. Captain Smith did order a slight change of course to head further south, but he did not reduce Titanic's speed. The ship pressed on at nearly full speed, despite the reports of ice ahead. Many historians believe this was because of pressure to maintain schedule and because of overconfidence in Titanic's supposed unsinkability. As night fell on April 14th, the air turned freezing. The sea was unusually calm, with little wind and no waves, conditions that made spotting icebergs more difficult. Lookouts Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee climbed into the crow's nest, scanning the dark horizon with only their eyes. Strangely, the binoculars usually kept in the crow's nest had been misplaced, leaving them at a disadvantage. At about 11:30 p.m., Fleet and Lee strained their eyes in the moonless night, unaware that disaster was only minutes away.